The courtroom was left speechless as 7-year-old Cecily Carpenter pointed fingers at a man, and then when the dog reacted with such expression, the air crackled with tension, because this child and her dog were about to expose a horrifying truth. But first, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. All eyes were fixed on the fragile girl as she hesitated but kept moving toward the witness stand. Each step looked harder than the one before. Judge Anderson Clarence, a stern man with years of experience, leaned forward, watching carefully. He understood. This trembling child held the answer to it all. At the defense table, who had been caught few days back by the state police, Blake Locke sat with unsettling composure. His lips curled in the faintest smirk. A software engineer by trade, he had the quiet, controlled demeanor of a man who trusted logic over emotion. But beneath that polished exterior lurked something darker. He stood accused of trying to abduct Cecily, yet the evidence against him was frustratingly thin. No DNA, no fingerprints, no confession. And now, the one witness who could break the case sat frozen in fear, her silence as damning as his arrogance. Then, as Cecily settled into the witness stand, something unexpected happened. Her wide, green eyes locked onto Locke's. Trembling, she lifted her fingers just slightly in a deliberate, practiced motion. A signal. Only two noticed. Judge Clarence and Cooper. The dog's body went rigid. His ears shot forward, his muscles coiled like a spring, and a low, warning growl tore from his throat. His stare never wavered from Locke. A hush fell over the courtroom. This wasn't just a trained response. This was instinct. Judge Clarence's gavel cracked like a gunshot. 15-minute recess, he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. The command was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet intensity. Something had shifted. Something irreversible. Outside the courtroom, Cecily sank to her knees beside Cooper, her small fingers twisting into his fur. Stacy Carpenter crouched beside them, her voice barely above a whisper. "Cecily, honey." But the girl didn't answer. She just pressed her face into Cooper's neck, her breath coming fast. The dog leaned into her, solid and unshakable, her silent protector. From the shadows of the hallway, FBI agent Nate Fury met Judge Clarence's gaze. "That wasn't just a reaction," Fury said lowly. "That dog noticed something in him." And in the heavy silence that followed, the unspoken truth hung between them. Cooper hadn't just growled. He'd noticed. Behind closed doors, Blake Locke's mask of composure cracked. His lawyer, Billy Johan, watched as Locke paced, his fingers twitching, his breath uneven. "She knows," Locke hissed under his breath, replaying the moment in his mind. The girl's silent signal, the dog's instant, visceral reaction. Johan leaned in. "Daniel, talk to me. What just happened?" But Locke wasn't listening. His mind spun, calculating, reassessing. He had planned for every variable, every shred of doubt. But the dog he hadn't seen coming. And now, for the first time since this began, something cold slithered through his veins. Fear. But there was a time, before the silence, before the fear, when Cecily's laughter filled rooms like sunlight. She used to beg for bedtime story, her small hands clutching fairy tale books. She'd spin in the backyard until she was dizzy, grass stains on her knees, her giggles floating on the warm air. Then came that spring afternoon, the one that split her life into before and after. Stacy had only looked away for a moment. From the kitchen window, she'd watched Cecily chasing dragonflies in front lawn, her laughter carrying through the screen. 4 minutes. That's all it took. A phone call, a turned back. When Stacy returned, the garden gate stood open. A black van idled at the curb, and there, crouched beside her daughter, was a man with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I have puppies in my car," he was saying, voice dripping with false sweetness. "Would you like to pet them?" Stacy's blood turned to ice. "Cecily!" The man's face twisted. His fingers closed around Cecily's wrist like a vice. Across the street, a retired officer, Aster Johan, dropped her grocery bags. "You there! Let go of that girl!" A heartbeat of hesitation, then Cecily wrenched free, sprinting into Stacy's shaking arms. By the time Stacy looked up, the van was gone. But the fear stayed. Sirens cut through the evening air as police swarmed the neighborhood. But it was FBI agents Nate Fury and Tommy Gates who recognized the pattern, their faces going grim as they compared notes. Black van. Puppies as bait. 3 other children gone. After this incident, she became something else entirely. A silent ghost of the vibrant girl she'd been. No more bedtime stories, no more crayon drawings taped to the fridge, just hollow eyes and nights spent trembling through wordless terrors. Stacy and Robin moved through their days like shattered people, trying every specialist, every therapy, until one afternoon, a child psychologist leaned forward with a hesitant suggestion. What if we try pet dog therapy? That's how Cooper entered their lives. Not just a dog, a lifeline. Cooper carried his own past. A decorated K-9 officer, he'd taken a bullet during a drug raid, saving 3 agents but ending his career. When the department referred him for euthanasia, Dr. Megan intervened. This dog still has purpose to live for, she'd insisted, seeing what others couldn't. The first time Cecily met him, she froze. Cooper didn't push. He simply existed near her, a quiet mountain of warmth and patience. Days passed before her small fingers finally brushed his fur, weeks before she rested her cheek against his scarred flank. Then came the miracle. As Cooper lay beside her during therapy, Cecily spoke 2 words: "Good boy." The sound of their daughter's voice after months of silence was almost more than they could bear. The wall had begun to crumble. The air in the courtroom thickened as the trial resumed. Cecily's small hands trembled around Cooper's leash, while prosecutor Clario Mona methodically laid out the case. One by one, witnesses took the stand, neighbors, investigators, and sharp-eyed Aster Johan, who described in chilling detail how Locke grabbed Cecily's arm. Through it all, Cecily remained silent, her fingers buried in Cooper's fur like an anchor. Then came her turn to testify. The gallery held its breath as the tiny witness settled onto the stand, Cooper pressed firmly against her legs. When Mona asked the crucial question, "Can you show us who tried to take you that day?" Cecily's arm rose slowly. Her finger pointed unwaveringly at Locke. The defense erupted in objections, but Judge Clarence's gaze remained fixed on Cecily, just in time to see her fingers twitch in that secret signal again. A deep, rumbling growl vibrated through the courtroom as Cooper's entire body went rigid, his unblinking stare pinning Locke to his seat. The sound wasn't just a warning, and this time, the whole court heard it. A ripple went through the courtroom. Judge Clarence's chair creaked as he leaned forward, his sharp gaze moving between Cooper's rigid posture and Locke's suddenly pale face. "Miss Mona," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "has this K-9 ever had contact with the defendant before today?" Clario didn't hesitate. "No, Your Honor." The judge's attention snapped to Locke. "Mr. Locke, care to explain why this dog seems to recognize you?" Locke's jaw worked silently, his knuckles whitening where they gripped the defense table. The air grew heavy with the weight of his silence. Before another word could be spoken, Clario was on her feet. "Your Honor, the prosecution requests an immediate recess for few hours. We have found some traces of the black van leading to some unknown designation. I'm sure this can lead us to the roots of this facade." The gavel slammed, granting permission. 2 hours and no more," said the judge. Then Fury's team moved swiftly. Time was slipping away. Fury's team moved like shadows through the dense woods, following the trail of soil samples that had led them to Locke's remote cabin. Cooper surged ahead, his nose low to the ground, every muscle taut with purpose. The cabin stood silent, its windows dark, empty. But Fury had learned to trust the dog's instincts. His flashlight beam cut through the dust as he swept the floor, then stopped. The boards near the far wall didn't quite match the others. With one sharp kick, the false flooring gave way. Cold air rushed up from the darkness below. Somewhere in that blackness, small voices had once cried out, and Cooper's echoing growl said what Fury already knew. They'd found Locke's hunting ground. The stale air revealed a nightmare frozen in time. Dust motes swirled in their flashlight beams, illuminating the remnants of stolen lives. A lone sneaker, its a shoe still fastened by small fingers. Eyeless dolls sprawled in grotesque poses. Each object told the same terrible story. Not just missing children who had fought to leave traces of themselves behind. Cooper's whine cut through the silence as he nosed a small, chewed teddy bear beneath the cot. The fur along his spine stood rigid, as if the very walls still echoed with the ghosts of those who'd been trapped here. Fury's throat tightened. In the gloom of the farthest corner, a cold figure turned into a child. Olivia Lang, missing for 6 endless months, curled into herself like a withered leaf. Her skeletal fingers clutched a tattered blanket as the flashlight's beam washed over her. When her sunken eyes focused on Fury's FBI jacket, A sound escaped her cracked lips. Help. More breath than word. Cooper let out a wounded noise from the doorway, the kind of sound dogs make when their world breaks. Fury was moving before he could think, his hands gentle as they brushed aside the rusted cuffs circling Olivia's wrists. She collapsed against him with a sob that shook her entire fragile frame. Easy now, Fury murmured into her matted hair, his arms tightening around her. You're coming home. Above them, Cooper stood guard, his low growl a promise to the darkness no one would touch this child again. Behind Fury, the team stood motionless, seasoned professionals reduced to stunned silence. They'd all stared into the abyss before. This crawled under their skin and stayed. The stale air tasted like injustice. Somewhere above ground in a well-lit courtroom, Blake Locke was playing his part. Polite smiles, reasonable doubt, the picture of wronged innocence. But down here in this tomb, the truth screamed from every scarred wall. There would be no closing arguments, no clever legal maneuvers, only reckoning. And it was coming faster than Locke could imagine. They immediately rushed. Leaving for courtroom, they ran against time, making it just on time. The courtroom air crackled with tension as Clario Mona delivered her final blow. Your DNA on the chains, your tire tracks at the cabin, and now. She turned toward the gallery where Olivia sat wrapped in a blanket, a living witness. Locke's carefully constructed mask shattered. His fingers twitched against the defense table, pale as bone. Cooper had risen from Cecily's feet without command, his massive body rigid with purpose. This wasn't the trained response to a signal. This was something deeper, something feral. For the first time, Blake Locke looked truly afraid, because this wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It had become a reckoning. Locke's gaze darted to Cooper, and something inside him broke. His lips moved silently at first, forming words too quiet to hear. Then, as if the confession was being torn from him, I want to change my plea. The courtroom erupted. Judge Clarence's gavel cracked once. Mr. Locke, the judge said, each word measured. Are you telling this court you wish to plead guilty? A shudder ran through Locke's body. Yes, one word. And just like that, after all the darkness, all the waiting, it was done. Judge Clarence's sentencing came down like a hammer. Life, no parole, no mercy. As the bailiffs moved in, Cooper finally relaxed his stance. His work was finished. Somewhere in the gallery, Olivia reached for Cecily's hand, and for the first time in a long while, the children breathed easy. Yet, even as justice was served, every gaze kept returning to Cooper, knight in furred armor, standing brave for all the scared lives. He settled back at Cecily's feet with a quiet sigh, his muzzle resting on her shoe. No growl now, no tension. Just the steady rise and fall of his breathing against her leg. But in those deep brown eyes burned something undeniable. We won. The monster was gone. The children were safe. And in the end, it hadn't taken grand speeches or clever arguments. Just one small girl's courage and the dog who refused to let evil walk. Prevailed victory. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the living room floor when something happened. Cecily knelt before Cooper, her small hands framing his scarred face. A tear splashed onto his muzzle as she leaned forward. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 words. Cooper answered the only way he knew how, with a slow sweeping wag of his tail and a gentle nudge of his wet nose against Cecily's cheek. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just a girl and her dog stitching their broken pieces back together, one quiet moment at a time. The deepest bonds aren't forged in sunlight and easy days. They're welded in darkness, in basement corners and courtroom battles, in silent signals and shared survival. Have you ever had a pet like Cooper? Do you trust instincts of dogs? What do you think of today's story? Let us know your thoughts in the comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing real-life tales like this.